Good evening, darlings. Welcome to Fireside Murders with Alistair Gray. I'm your host, Alistair, pouring a whiskey by the hearth while the storm rages outside. Tonight we return to the world of Hercule Poirot. Only this time, the little grey cells will face something far colder than a country house killer. Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. It was the winter of 1926, a season that seemed determined to bury England under an avalanche of white forgetfulness. Hercule Poirot, the renowned private detective, retired or so he claimed, though retirement sat upon him like an ill-fitting overcoat, found himself jolting along a narrow moorland road in the back of a hired Daimler. The vehicle, a sturdy beast in its own right, groaned under the assault of the worsening weather. Snowflakes, fat and relentless, hurled themselves against the windscreen like suicidal moths, obscuring the view ahead. Poirot, bundled in a thick fur-lined ulster that made his compact frame resemble a particularly indignant walrus, peered out with distaste. His gloved hands clutched a telegram, crumpled slightly from repeated readings. The message was curt, almost brusque. "Come at once. Blackthorn Hall. Urgent. Evelyn Marchmont." No pleasantries, no explanations. Poirot disliked vagueness. It offended his sense of order. Yet something in the urgency, perhaps the faint tremor he imagined in the typed words, had compelled him to leave his cosy London flat and venture into this frozen wilderness. Mon Dieu! Hastings would label this atmospheric, Poirot muttered to himself, twirling the tips of his impeccable moustaches against the invading chill that seeped through the car's seams. Captain Hastings, his old friend and chronicler, was alas enjoying the sunnier climes of Argentina with his wife. I, Hercule Poirot, call it infernal. Why must the English romanticize their weather? In Belgium, snow is merely snow, practical, contained. Here, it is a melodrama. The driver, a stoic Yorkshireman named Grimes with a face like weathered oak, grunted in agreement, or perhaps indifference. "Storm's brewin' proper, sir. Been buildin' since dawn. Roads'll be impassable by nightfall." Poirot nodded absently, his mind already turning over the sparse facts. Evelyn Marchmont. He recalled the name from the society pages. Heiress to the Marchmont mining empire. A fortune built on coal pits that scarred the northern landscapes much like this blizzard now scarred the sky. 6 months prior, her uncle, Sir Reginald Marchmont, had vanished during a grouse shoot on these very moors. No body, no clues, only a scattered flock of birds and a single shotgun lying in the heather. The estate, vast and crumbling, passed to Evelyn under the terms of a peculiar will. She must host one final Christmas house party at Blackthorn Hall to lay old ghosts to rest. Ghosts? Poirot snorted softly. He preferred murderers. They, at least, left fingerprints, alibis, motives, tangible things for the little grey cells to dissect. At last, the Daimler rounded a bend, and Blackthorn Hall loomed into view. A Gothic monstrosity of blackened stone, its towers piercing the bruised sky like accusatory fingers. The manor was a wedding cake gone wrong, iced with snow and garnished with gargoyles that leered down at intruders. Chimneys belched smoke in defiant plumes. As if the house itself were alive and breathing defiance against the storm. Snow already lay a foot deep on the drive, and the sky hung low, heavy with the promise of more. Grimes braked gently, the tires skidding a fraction before halting before the grand oak doors. "Here we are, sir. Blackthorn. Mind the steps. They're treacherous." Poirot alighted with his usual precision, his patent leather shoes sinking into the snow despite his efforts. He paused, surveying the facade. Ivy clung to the walls like desperate fingers, and the windows, tall, narrow, mullioned, stared back like empty eyes. Somewhere inside, a clock struck the hour. 3 slow chimes, echoing across the moor. The doors swung open before he could knock, revealing a butler of indeterminate age, his skin pale as mushroom flesh, his eyes sunken in a face etched with the lines of long service. He wore the traditional black tailcoat, but it hung loosely as if the man had shrunk within it over the years. "Mr. Hercule Poirot, Madame is expecting you in the library. The other guests—" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder into the dimly lit hall. "Have arrived ahead of the weather. They are snowed in with us now." Poirot's green eyes gleamed with interest. "Parfait! A captive audience, then. Lead on, mon ami." The entrance hall was a cavern of shadows and antiquity. Suits of armour stood sentinel along the walls, their visors blank and menacing. A vast staircase swept upward, carpeted in threadbare crimson that muffled their footsteps. Portraits of long-dead marchmonts glared down, stern men with mutton-chop whiskers, women in crinolines with eyes that seemed to follow. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax polish, wood smoke, and something else. A faint metallic tang, like old blood or rusted iron. The butler, his name, Poirot learned, was Wilkins, led him through a corridor lined with tapestries depicting medieval hunts, stags brought down by arrows, hounds baying in eternal pursuit. At last, they reached the library doors, heavy oak carved with twisting vines. Wilkins knocked once, then pushed them open. Warmth enveloped Poirot like an embrace, the roar of a log fire in a grate large enough to roast an ox, the golden glow of oil lamps reflecting off shelves upon shelves of leather-bound tomes. The room was a cathedral of knowledge, ladders on brass rails reaching to the ceiling, a globe in one corner, a billiard table in another. But it was the occupants who drew the eye. 5 faces turned as Poirot entered, a tableau of suspicion and forced politeness. At the centre, rising from a high-backed chair, was Evelyn Marchmont herself. 28 years old, raven-haired, clad in mourning black velvet, despite the absence of a confirmed corpse. Her beauty was sharp, almost severe. High cheekbones, porcelain skin, eyes the colour of storm clouds. She extended a gloved hand. "Mr. Poirot, you came. I wasn't sure the telegram would reach you in time." Poirot bowed over her hand with Gallican flair. "Mademoiselle, when Hercule Poirot receives a cry for help, he responds, though I confess, the details are sparse." Evelyn's smile was thin. "All in good time. First, allow me to introduce the others. We are at an intimate party this Christmas. Suspect the first, Dr. Felix Harrow, mid-30s, the family physician. Tall and lean, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a black medical bag clutched like a talisman. His hands trembled slightly as he shook Poirot's. Nerves, or perhaps something stronger. Motive whispered in society's shadows. A rumoured affair with Evelyn, positioning him to share in the inheritance if she claimed it unchallenged. Suspect the second, Captain Hugo Vale, 42, retired from the Boer War with a livid scar slashing his cheek like a lightning bolt. Broad-shouldered, moustached in the military style, he stood ramrod straight even in civvies. His eyes, pale blue and piercing, flicked to Poirot with assessment. Motive, Sir Reginald's old comrade in arms, owed a king's ransom in gambling debts, 20,000, forgiven only if the baronet lived to sign the cheque. Suspect the third, Miss Lydia Crane, 25, Evelyn's personal secretary. Mousy brown hair pinned severely, spectacles perpetually fogged as if from inner turmoil. She bobbed a curtsy, her fingers ink-stained. Motive: caught embezzling $3,000 from the estate ledgers. Sir Reginald had threatened Scotland Yard. Suspect the fourth: Mrs. Agatha Vale, Hugo's wife, a former music hall chanteuse with a voice that could shatter crystal, and often did. Platinum curls, rouge a touch too bold, she lounged on a chaise with a cigarette holder. Her laugh was like breaking glass. Motive: seething jealousy of Evelyn, whom she believed was entangled with her husband, and a conviction that Hugo was the true heir, cheated by the will. And then the sixth presence, unsettling in its innocence. A child's porcelain doll, propped at the tea table as if a guest. Dressed in antique lace, its glass eyes reflected the firelight with unnatural vividness. Blonde curls of what looked suspiciously like real human hair. Evelyn waved a hand dismissively. A family heirloom, belonged to my late cousin Amelia. She disappeared here as a child. We keep it for sentiment. No one met Poirot's gaze when she said it. Champagne was poured. Veuve Clicquot, vintage 1918, bubbles rising like tiny accusations. Conversation skirted the edges, the storm, the moors, the excellence of the grouse pie. But beneath it all simmered tension. Poirot sipped his tisane, brought in his own flask, for he trusted no one else's infusions, and observed. Outside, the blizzard truly descended. By 4 p.m., snow lashed the windows like claws. The telephone lines snapped with a crack like gunfire at 4:12 precisely. Wilkins confirmed it later. The generator in the cellar coughed but held, casting the house in electric light that felt fragile, provisional. The moor vanished, swallowed whole. Blackthorn Hall was isolated, a ship adrift in a white sea. Evelyn leaned close to Poirot as the others drifted into uneasy chatter. There are threats, Mr. Poirot, anonymous letters, whispers of Sir Reginald's return, and sightings, on the moors, in the house. Her voice dropped. I fear for my life. Poirot's moustache twitched. Fear not, mademoiselle. Hercule Poirot is here. Let the games and the storm begin. Chapter 2. The Scream in the Night. Hercule Poirot was already awake. He had not slept. The guest bed, 4-poster, carved with gargoyles, was too soft, the sheets too heavy with lavender. He sat in a wing chair, pocket watch open on his knee, counting the ticks like rosary beads. The scream came from the east wing. Evelyn's suite. Poirot was first in the corridor, silk dressing gown belted tight, slippers silent on the runner. Candles guttered in brass sconces, throwing shadows that danced like accomplices. Dr. Felix Harrow stumbled from the room opposite, pyjamas askew, black medical bag banging his shin. Evelyn, he gasped, voice cracking like thin ice. Captain Hugo Vale appeared next, revolver in hand, service Webley, barrel cold. His scar stood livid in the candlelight. Mrs. Vale followed, curlers askew, eyes wide with theatrical terror. Miss Crane brought up the rear, clutching a candle that dripped wax like tears. Wilkins the butler materialized from nowhere, crowbar already in hand. The master bedroom door was locked from the inside. Poirot pressed his ear to the oak. Silence, then scrape. Something dragged across floorboards. "Mademoiselle Marchmont!" he called. No answer. Captain Vale raised a boot. "Stand back!" Thud. The door shuddered. Thud. A panel splintered. Wilkins wedged the crowbar. The lock gave with a shriek of metal. They spilled into the room and froze. Evelyn Marchmont lay on the Persian rug, arms flung wide as if embracing the floor. Her throat was opened from ear to ear, a second mouth grinning red. Blood had frozen mid-spurt. forming delicate crimson icicles that hung from the chandelier like macabre stalactites. The room was a perfect sealed box, door locked, key still in the lock on the inside. Windows bolted shut, snowdrifts pressed against the panes like white faces peering in. No footprints on the sill. Chimney, narrow, soot-blackened, too tight for even a child. Floorboards, solid oak, no seams, no trapdoors. And on the vanity mirror, finger-painted in Evelyn's own blood. The doll, seize. Poirot knelt, gloved finger hovering over the wound. Curieux, the cut is post-mortem. Dr. Harrow dropped to his knees, fingers probing the carotid. No pulse. Rigour just beginning. She's been dead. An hour, perhaps less. Yet the blood is frozen, Poirot murmured. The room is warm. Fire still burning. Explain, Miss Crane whimpered. Mrs. Vale crossed herself, though she was Church of England. Captain Vale's revolver trembled. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The bed was undisturbed. Sheets turned down, pillow dented where Evelyn's head had lain. A glass of milk on the nightstand, untouched, a skin forming on the surface. Then he saw it. The porcelain doll from the library now sat on Evelyn's pillow. Its head had been rotated 180 degrees, facing the wall. Its glass eyes stared at the headboard, unblinking. Poirot lifted the doll with a handkerchief. Beneath it, a single drop of molten beeswax hardened into a perfect teardrop on the linen. The house used only tallow candles. Dr. Harrow opened his bag, produced a stethoscope. Let me confirm. Non. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. You will touch nothing. This is now the domain of Hercule Poirot. Poirot's eyes narrowed. 1 hour ago, Mademoiselle Marchmont was alive. She locked her door from the inside. No one entered, no one left. Yet she is dead, her throat slashed after death. The doll moved, the message written. We are in the presence of an impossible crime. He turned to the window. Snow pressed against the glass, undisturbed. But in the drift directly below Evelyn's window, a perfect circle melted into the snow, as if something hot had fallen from above. Poirot closed the curtains with a snap. Mes amis, the storm has trapped us with a murderer. And the murderer is trapped with Hercule Poirot. Chapter 3. The little grey cells awaken if, by first light, the moor had vanished. Snow reached the upstairs windows, erasing the world. Blackthorn Hall was a ship frozen in a white sea, and the crew, 6 souls and 1 detective, were now prisoners of the storm. Hercule Poirot stood at the library window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the blizzard sculpt phantoms from the drifts. He had not slept. His little grey cells demanded order. And order was in short supply. Breakfast was a silent affair. Wilkins served porridge the colour of wet cement, kippers that stared accusingly from the platter. No one ate. At 7:15 a.m., Poirot clapped once, sharp, final. Assez, we begin. He had transformed the billiard table into an evidence altar. Green baize became a mortuary slab for the impossible. Item 1, the porcelain doll, now wrapped in a velvet cloth. Its head had been righted, but the neck joints showed fresh scratches. Metal filings glinted under Poirot's magnifying lens. Item 2, the beeswax teardrop, pried from the linen. Poirot held it to the light. Beeswax is produced by glands in the abdomen of Ait. The worker bee. This droplet is pure, no tallow, no paraffin. Someone brought their own candle. Item 3. A scrap of music hall sheet music retrieved from beneath Evelyn's bed. The Phantom's Waltz, annotated in violet ink, reverse for truth. Item 4. Captain Vale's Webley revolver, 1 bullet missing. The cylinder smelled of fresh cordite. Poirot paced, a small black figure against the roaring fire. "No, we seek 2 killers, or 1 killer and 1 accomplice who lies." He turned to Dr. Harrow. "You examined the body. No strangulation, no injection sites, yet death before the cut. Explain." Harrow's spectacles flashed. "Heart failure, fear. Possible, but the blood, frozen mid-air. The room was warm. Science demands an answer." Miss Crane spoke, voice trembling. "I heard scratching in the walls at 1:45 a.m., like rats, but rhythmic." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Rhythmic, like a code." He produced the sheet music, placed it on the gramophone, played forward, a jaunty waltz, reversed, click whir. The melody became Morse code. Poirot translated aloud. "WWALLS." Captain Vale laughed, too loud. "Children's games, the house is old. Pipes, mice, silence!" Poirot's voice cut like a blade. "Old houses do not fire revolvers." He led them to the cellar door. The air grew colder, damp with coal dust. A single bulb swung overhead. The wine racks concealed a false panel. Behind it, a child-sized tunnel, bricked up in 1911 according to the mason's mark. Fresh mortar crumbs littered the floor. Poirot scraped with a penknife. The brick was soft, plaster painted to match. Inside, a narrow passage barely 3 feet high. Footprints in the dust, small bare feet. And on the wall, scratched with a nail, "I see you all." Mrs. Vale screamed. The sound ricocheted like a bullet. Poirot sealed the panel. "The house has passages, like veins. Someone small, or someone who crawls, moves within." Back in the library, he laid out the timeline on a silver tray. 22 minutes, enough for murder, staging, escape. But how? He pointed to the chimney flue in Evelyn's room. Re-examined at dawn. Soot disturbed. A thin wire glinted in the grate, tied to a clockwork rat. Music hall prop, gears jammed with coal dust. The doll was puppeteered from above. The wire pulled the head. The rat delivered the razor, heated in the kitchen range, dropped via dumbwaiter shaft. Dr. Harrow paled. "The dumbwaiter. I used it to send up warm milk." Poirot smiled thinly. "Exactement. The milk was laced with chloral hydrate. Evelyn slept. Then, poof, gas from the boiler, pumped through the shaft. Colourless, odourless. She never woke." He turned to the melted circle in the snow beneath the window. "The razor, still hot, was dropped after the cut. It melted the drift. The killer never left the room because the killer was never in. It—" Captain Vale's hand drifted to his empty holster. "Clever, but you've no proof." Poirot produced the missing bullet, dug from the cellar wall. "Fired to crack the gas pipe. Your revolver, mon capitaine. Your fingerprints in the coal dust." Chapter 4. The House That Bled. The house began to behave. Poirot stood in the great hall, pocket watch in hand, counting the seconds between anomalies. The suspects hovered like ghosts at a séance. First came the clock. The grandfather in the corridor, oak case, moon-faced dial, struck 13. Miss Crane dropped her teacup. Porcelain shattered like gunfire. Poirot did not flinch. Mechanism tampered. Someone advances the hands. Second, the portrait. Sir Reginald Marchmont's oil likeness, hunting pink, shotgun crooked in arm, hung above the staircase. At 9:42, a bead of crimson welled from the painted left eye, tracked down the canvas, dripped onto the rug. Mrs. Vale screamed, "He's crying blood!" Poirot climbed the stairs, produced a handkerchief, dabbed the tear. Gelatine capsule, warmed by a resistance wire behind the frame. Music hall trick. He traced a hair-thin cable snaking into the wainscot. Wilkins swore he had locked the attic door. The key was still in his pocket. Poirot gathered the dolls, 5 identical, all cold to the touch. Multiples, The original is bait. These are decoys. Someone moves them to unnerve us." He led the party to the attic. Dust lay thick as flour. A single set of prints, adult boots, led to the dormer. The doll sat on the sill. Beneath it, a brass speaking tube, mouth flared like a lily. Poirot leaned in. "Allo?" A child's voice answered, tinny close. "Uncle's hungry." Captain Vale kicked the tube. It rang hollow. "Ventriloquism. Throw your voice down the pipe. Simple." "Simple? Oui, but who?" Poirot's eyes flicked to Mrs. Vale, former star of the Alhambra, mistress of projection. She paled beneath her rouge. Downstairs, Poirot discovered the dumbwaiter shafts. Wallpaper peeled back revealed a lattice of wooden boxes, each the size of a coffin, running between floors. The shaft to Evelyn's room was smeared with coal dust and a single blonde hair, real, root bulb intact. Dr. Harrow opened his medical bag. Inside, curare ampules, Amazonian poison, paralytic. "For research," he muttered. Poirot lifted one. No injection site on the body, yet curare explains the doll's walking. He demonstrated a drop on the clockwork rat's gears. The mechanism seized, then jerked forward, spasmodic, lifelike. Miss Crane whispered, "The embezzlement Evelyn found out. I forged Sir Reginald's signature. She was going to the police." Poirot nodded. "Motive, but not method. You are 5'2". The shafts are narrow." At 11 a.m., the lights flickered. The generator coughed. Darkness swallowed the hall for 3 heartbeats. When the bulbs flared back, the doll sat at the foot of the stairs, head rotated fully backward, a straight razor balanced on its lap. The blade was warm. Poirot wrapped it in silk. Heated in the range, delivered via shaft, used post-mortem. The frozen blood. The throat was slashed after the gas killed her. The icicles formed when the warm blade met cold air. He turned to Captain Vale. "Your bullet cracked the gas pipe. Your wife threw her voice. But the mind, the architecture of terror, that is one person." Poirot looked up. The attic again. Something heavy moves. They climbed. The dormer doll was gone. In its place, a child's coffin, pine lid ajar. Inside, mummified remains, adult male, desiccated, dressed in hunting tweed. Dr. Harrow retched. "Sir Reginald, taxidermied, the skin stitched." Chapter 5. The Midnight Confession. Blackthorn Hall had shrunk to a single candlelit island in a white ocean. The suspects sat in the library like chess pieces waiting for the final move. Poirot stood before the fire, silhouette sharp. On the mantel, the mummified hand of Sir Reginald, severed at the wrist, fingers curled around the stopped pocket watch. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "the house has performed its tricks. Now we unmask the conjurer." He placed the music box from the doll on the table. It played The Phantom's Waltz. Forward, jaunty. He reversed the cylinder. Exactament. The finale is below. They descended single file, candles guttering. The cellar air was thick with coal and something sweeter, formaldehyde. The false brick panel hung open like a mouth. The child-sized tunnel stretched into darkness. Poirot produced a police whistle, blew one shrill blast. 10 paces in, the tunnel widened into a hidden chamber. A child's coffin lay on a trestle. Lid off, empty. On the floor, fresh blood, still wet, forming the words "Midnight Confession." Miss Crane broke. "I did it!" she wailed, spectacles sliding. "I forged the will. Evelyn found the ledgers. She was going to ruin me." Poirot raised a hand. "Non, you confess to fraud, not murder. Sit." He knelt by the coffin. Inside the lid, photographs pinned with dressmaker's needles, Evelyn asleep in her bed, taken through the dumbwaiter hatch. Dr. Harrow whispered, "Chloral in the milk. I prepared it for Sir Reginald's pain. Someone stole the bottle." Poirot nodded. The milk was the first death, gas the second, razor the third, a trinity of murder. Poirot turned to her. You threw your voice, you moved the dolls, but you needed access. He opened the coffin's false bottom. Inside, Captain Vale's missing signal rope, knotted into a noose. Captain Vale lunged for the tunnel. Poirot sidestepped. The captain's scar split open on a brick, blood real this time. You discovered Sir Reginald alive in the walls, Poirot said, pinning Vale's arm. Cancer-riddled, hidden by Dr. Harrow's mercy. You murdered him to silence the debt, then walled him up. Evelyn threatened. Exposure. You repeated the method, chloral, gas, razor. Your wife staged the haunting. Mrs. Vale laughed. High, broken. He promised me the manor. We'd be lord and lady. Poirot produced the heated razor from the doll's dress. Your fingerprints in the coal dust. The bullet fired to crack the pipe. The speaking tube to the attic. All yours. In the flame, the real doll sat on the coffin edge, head normal, eyes closed. Poirot opened them. Inside each glass orb, a tiny photograph, Captain Vale strangling Sir Reginald in the tunnel, time-stamped 1:45 a.m. Camera obscura, Poirot explained. Lens in the doll's eye, wire shutter, activated by the clockwork rat, the child's giggle, a wax cylinder in the speaking tube, your voice, madame, recorded weeks ago. Captain Vale sagged. The storm was perfect, no escape, no witnesses. Poirot smiled without warmth, except Hercule Poirot. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The library had become a tribunal. One candle on the billiard table cast long shadows across green bays. The suspects sat in a semicircle. Captain Vale in cuffs improvised from curtain cord, Mrs. Vale chain-smoking, Dr. Harrow pale as parchment, Miss Crane sobbing silently, Wilkins standing sentinel. Poirot stood at the head, the mummified hand of Sir Reginald resting on a velvet cushion like a royal relic. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, the curtain falls. The impossible is simple when you discard the impossible. He placed 6 objects in a perfect line. The beeswax teardrop, the reversed music box, the heated razor still faintly warm. The Webley bullet, flattened from impact. The doll's glass eye, containing the miniature photograph. These are not clues, they are chapters of a confession. He turned to Captain Vale. You begin the story, mon capitaine. Vale's scar twitched. Rot! You've nothing. Poirot lifted the bullet, fired from your revolver into the cellar gas pipe at 1:42 a.m., 3 minutes before Miss Crane heard scratching. The crack allowed coal gas to seep up the dumbwaiter shaft into Evelyn's room. Wind direction, north-northwest, funneled it perfectly. She slept. She died. No mark. He lifted the razor. You heated this in the kitchen range at 1:55 a.m. Wilkins saw you making cocoa. Dropped it via the shaft. It slashed the throat post-mortem. The warm blade met cold air. Blood froze mid-spurt into icicles. Mrs. Vale laughed, smoke curling. Clever, but the doll, the walls, my artistry. Poirot nodded. You were the distraction. Ventriloquism through the speaking tube. 5 duplicate dolls moved via fishing line through ceiling roses. The blood from Sir Reginald's portrait, gelatin capsules on a timer. All to make us chase ghosts. Dr. Harrow whispered, And Sir Reginald? Poirot lifted the mummified hand. Alive until 6 months ago. Cancer. You, docteur, supplied morphine. He begged to die. You refused. He hid, in the walls, fed by guilt, by tunnels built for a child who vanished in 1911. Captain Vale found him, strangled him with signal rope. Your rope, mon capitaine. Taxidermied the corpse with your battlefield kit to preserve silence. The hand was trophy. Poirot opened the doll's eye. The photograph enlarged on the wall via magic lantern. Captain Vale, scar-livid, hands around Sir Reginald's neck in the tunnel. Timestamp, 1:45 a.m. exactly. The doll was camera, lens in the pupil, shutter wired to the music box, activated when the rat delivered the razor. The child's giggle? You're recording, madame, on a wax cylinder hidden in the attic. Miss Crane hiccuped. But the message? The doll sees. Poirot smiled thinly. Written by Mrs. Vale after the murder, using a frozen blood pipette, stolen from Dr. Harrow's bag. The beeswax? From her stage makeup kit, used to seal the doll's neck joint after rotation. He turned to Vale. Your motive, $20,000 debt. Sir Reginald alive meant ruin. Evelyn's discovery of the embezzlement, Miss Crane's forgery, gave you the second victim. One method, 2 murders. Vale lunged, cord snapping. Poirot sidestepped. Vale crashed into the fire irons. Chapter 7. Justice served. The storm broke as suddenly as it had come. A thin blade of sunlight cut through the library curtains, striking the billiard table where the evidence lay like spent cards. Hercule Poirot stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the moor reappear, white, endless, innocent. Inspector Japp's sled team had carved a narrow path through the drifts. The dogs panted steam into the frigid air. Captain Hugo Vale and Mrs. Agatha Vale were already in cuffs. Real ones this time, steel glinting like frost. Dr. Harrow, Miss Crane and Wilkins stood apart, pale but alive. The mummified hand of Sir Reginald had been wrapped in oilskin, ready for the coroner. Japp stomped snow from his boots. Paths holding, Poirot. We'll have them in York by noon. Charges. Poirot turned, moustaches impeccable despite the night. Double murder, Inspector. Sir Reginald Marchmont and Mademoiselle Evelyn Marchmont. Accessory, fraud, corpse desecration. The evidence is incontrovertible. He gestured to the table. The doll sat upright, eyes closed, a silent witness. Captain Vale's scar had crusted with blood from his fall. He stared at Poirot with the dull hatred of a cornered animal. You think this ends it? The house remembers. Poirot's smile was winter-thin. No, the house forgets when Hercule Poirot remembers. He addressed the room one last time. Mes amis, justice is not vengeance, it is order restored. Miss Crane, your embezzlement will be repaid. 3,000 to the estate. Probation, not prison. Dr. Harrow, mercy killing is no crime when begged for, but hiding a body, a fine. Wilkins, you saw nothing, heard nothing. Loyalty is admirable, silence is not. Wilkins bowed, eyes lowered. Outside, the sled team waited. Japp's men loaded the prisoners. Mrs. Vale paused at the threshold, platinum curls dulled by snow. I could have been a star again, she murmured, lady of the manor. Poirot closed the door behind her. Madame, the stage is cruel to those who mistake it for reality. Poirot supervised the burning of the dolls, all 6, in the kitchen range. The porcelain cracked like gunshots. The glass eyes melted into blue tears. He kept one item, the pocket watch, stopped at 1:45 a.m. He wound it gently. It ticked once, then resumed its steady heartbeat. Time, he said to the empty kitchen, marches on. 10:07 a.m. The moor path widened. A second sled arrived, coroner's wagon. Sir Reginald's remains were loaded with reverence. The hidden chamber was sealed with fresh brick. The mason's mark read 1926, closed. Miss Crane approached Poirot on the steps, cheeks flushed from cold. What happens to Blackthorn now? Poirot glanced at the manor. Gothic, silent, snow-capped. Sold, demolished perhaps. Some houses are better forgotten. Noon. Poirot boarded the Daimler. Grimes, the driver, had returned with chains on the tyres. The engine coughed, then purred. As they descended the drive, Poirot looked back. The doll's silhouette, or was it, stood at an upper window. He blinked. Nothing. Imagination, he muttered. The little grey cells despise it. 3 weeks later, London. Poirot sat in his Baker Street flat, tisane steaming. A parcel arrived, brown paper, no return address. Inside, the doll's remaining glass eye and a note in childish scrawl. "Thank you for setting Uncle free. He says hello from the walls." Poirot dropped the eye into his saucer. It sank, staring up. He stirred his tisane once, twice. Non, some cases even Poirot prefers to forget. He poured the tea down the sink. The eye swirled, then vanished. Chapter 8. Epilogue. The Letter. Spring had crept into London like a thief, melting the last memories of that infernal blizzard. The North York moors were green again, dotted with lambing sheep and forget-me-nots. Blackthorn Hall stood empty, its windows boarded, a for sale sign battered by winds that no longer howled with malice. Rumours persisted in the village pub. Lights in the upper windows, a child's laughter on the moor at twilight. But rumours are cheap. Truth is dear. Hercule Poirot sat in his Baker Street flat, the one with the symmetrical furniture and the patent moustache curlers. The room smelled of tisane and violet-scented pomade. He had returned to routine, solving petty thefts for duchesses, advising Scotland Yard on forgeries. The blizzard horror was filed away in his mental cabinet, labelled Resolved Order Restored. Yet some cases linger like a stubborn stain. On a drizzly April afternoon, a parcel arrived. Plain brown paper, twine knotted with childish precision, no postmark beyond Yorkshire. Poirot turned it over, his little grey cells tingling. He slit the string with a letter opener shaped like a miniature sword. Inside, a single porcelain doll's eye, glass blue and unnaturally vivid, staring up from cotton wool. And beneath it, a letter, folded thrice, paper thick as cream, handwriting wobbly but deliberate like a child practicing penmanship. Poirot unfolded it carefully. The ink was violet, smelling faintly of heather. "Dear Mr. Poirot, thank you for coming to Blackthorn. The storm was scary, but you made the bad man go away. Uncle Reggie says hello. He's not in the walls anymore. He's free now, walking the moor with Amelia. She's my cousin, the one who got lost when we played hide-and-seek. I hid too good. In the tunnels. They bricked me up, but I got out. Small spaces are for dolls. The doll saw everything. It has eyes in the dark. Captain Vale hurt Uncle with the rope. Mrs. Vale sang songs to scare people. But you were clever. You burned the dolls, but this eye escaped. It watches still. Don't come back. The house is sleepy now. But if you do, bring chocolate. Uncle likes Bourneville. From the girl in the walls. P.S. The blizzard was me. I whispered to the wind." Poirot read it twice, moustaches quivering. A child? Alive in the tunnels all these years? Fed on scraps, perhaps, by a guilty servant, or something less corporeal. He placed the eye on his saucer, poured tisane over it. The glass sank, bubbles rising like tiny screams. "Non," he murmured. "Some mysteries are not for solving. They are for forgetting." But Poirot did not forget. That night he telephoned Inspector Japp. "The Manor. Search the tunnels again. Look for a child." Japp grumbled. "Poirot, the place is sealed. Demolition starts next week." "Delay it." 2 days later, a telegram. "Tunnels empty. Bones found. Child, circa 1911. Amelia Marchmont. No recent signs." Poirot burned the telegram in his ashtray. The eye had vanished from the saucer, evaporated with the tea. Or he locked his door that night, drew the curtains. In the mirror, His reflection twinkled. For a heartbeat, the glass eye stared back from his own socket. He blinked. It was gone. Weeks passed. Poirot took a case in Devon, poisoned scones at a vicarage. Routine, orderly. But in quiet moments he heard it, scratching in the walls of his flat, rhythmic like a code. One evening, returning from the opera, he found a gift on his doorstep. A chocolate bar, Bourneville, wrapper pristine, no note. Poirot did not eat it. He fed it to the Thames, watching the wrapper float away like a tiny boat. "Adieu, little ghost," he whispered. "Hercule Poirot closes the door." Yet some doors creak open again. In Yorkshire, demolition began. Workers unearthed the child's coffin, empty as before. But in the bricked tunnel, a fresh scratching. "Thank you, come play." The foreman quit that day. The house was razed by summer's end. Stones carted, away. Foundation poured for a motorway services. Travellers now stop there for coffee and pasties. Some report a child's giggle in the toilets. Others see a porcelain doll in the rearview mirror. Seated in empty cars. Poirot never returned, but on blustery nights he checks his walls, just in case, order and method always. But even the little grey cells know. Some blizzards never truly thaw. Chapter 9. Sleepy Bonus, the real Blackthorn Hall. Now, my dears, before we blow out the candle entirely, let us linger in the embers with a sleepy bonus. You have journeyed with Poirot through the locked room, the frozen blood, the dolls that walked when no one watched. But was any of it real? Close your eyes. Let the moor settle around you. I promise truth, and truth is stranger than fiction. Blackthorn Hall was real. In the North Yorkshire archives, under the dusty ledger, Estates, demolished, you will find it. Blackthorn Hall, built 1823, raised 1939. A Gothic pile on the edge of the moors, owned by the Marchmonts, coal barons who clawed black gold from the earth and buried their secrets just as deep. Sir Reginald Marchmont did vanish in 1925, not 1926. A grouse shoot, 12-bore shotgun found in the heather, no body. The inquest said misadventure. The will said one final Christmas house party, or the estate reverts to charity. The party happened. December 1925. Guests snowed in for 4 days. Telephone lines down. Generator failed on night 3. On the morning of the 4th day, the housemaid found Miss Evelyn Marchmont in her locked bedroom. Throat slashed, blood frozen in mid-air. The room was sealed, no weapon, no footprints in the snow beneath the window. Scotland Yard came by sled. They never solved it. The file is still open. The Blackthorn impossible. The dolls? Real. 6 porcelain beauties, dressed in lace, found in the attic after demolition. One had a camera lens in its left eye. Patented 1919, music hall novelty. The others hollow, wired for movement. The tunnels? Real, built for a child. Amelia Marchmont, age 7, lost 1911. Her disappearance was blamed on gypsies. The walls were bricked up to keep the draft out. In 1939, when the house came down, workers found child-sized footprints in the dust of the cellar tunnel. Fresh, leading nowhere. The mummified hand, real. Discovered in a priest hole behind the library chimney. Adult male, hunting tweed, pocket watch stopped at 1:45 a.m. The coroner said, taxidermy, amateur but effective. No identity. Captain Hugo Vale, real name Herbert Vane, dishonourably discharged, scar from a bayonet in the Transvaal. Gambling debts $18,000, hanged himself in York Jail, 1926. His wife, Agatha Vane, music hall singer, the phantom soprano, vanished the same night. Body found months later in a snowdrift, mouth open mid-song. Dr. Felix Harrow, struck off the medical register 1927 for unorthodox euthanasia. Died in obscurity, 1943, Miss Lydia Crane, emigrated to Canada, became a librarian, never spoke of Blackthorn again. And Poirot, he was there. A single entry in his private casebook, dated January 1926. Blackthorn Hall, impossible murder. Solution, gas shafts theatrics. Perpetrators deceased. Child in walls, unconfirmed. Some order cannot be restored. Burned the dolls, kept the eye. It blinks when I am not looking. The eye? In 1952, when Poirot's estate was catalogued, a small velvet box was found in his safe. Inside, a glass doll's eye, blue perfect. A note in his handwriting for Hastings. If I die suddenly, throw this in the Thames. Some storms follow you home. Hastings did. The eye sank, but on foggy nights, fishermen swear they see it, floating just below the surface of the river watching the bridges. Blackthorn Hall is gone. A service station stands there now. Greasy spoons, fluorescent lights, lorry drivers sipping tea. But the ladies' toilet. Stall 3. The mirror sometimes fogs when no one breathes. And if you look closely, very closely, you'll see a child's handprint, smalled or cold, waiting. Chapter 10. Good Night from Alistair. SFX. The last ember sighs. A grandfather clock strikes 1. Slow, final. Outside, a night bus hisses to a stop, doors folding shut like a secret. Alistair. Voice of featherbed whisper, every word a lullaby. And so, my midnight travellers, we reach the final page. The fire is ash. The moor is silent. The dolls are blind. You have walked the corridors of Blackthorn Hall with Poirot, felt the snow against the window, the frozen blood on the chandelier, the child's giggle in the walls. Now, let it go. Let the storm drift back into memory. Before you slip into dreams, a few gentle truths from your host. This tale was woven from real shadows and real snow. The names were changed, the dates nudged, the dolls multiplied. But the chill, that was authentic. If you ever drive the A169 at dusk and see a service station glowing like a lonely ship, slow down, buy a coffee, check stall 3, or don't. Some doors are better left unopened. Now the ritual. I read every reply by firelight. A thank you from the bottom of this storyteller's heart. To the insomniacs in Toronto, the night shift nurses in Glasgow, the students cramming in Seoul, the grandparents in Cape Town rocking a grandchild to sleep. You kept me company across the dark. This channel, Fireside Murders with Alistair Gray, is a hearth built for wanderers. If you enjoyed the shiver, do 3 small kindnesses. The video, so the algorithm knows next week, the lighthouse that swallowed Timer Keeper, a storm, a clock that runs backward, bring a blanket. And now, the goodnight proper. Wherever you are, if you're in a high-rise in Singapore, let the city lights be your stars. If you're in a cottage in the Highlands, let the sheep outside be your lullaby. If you're on a night ferry, let the engines be your heartbeat. Close your eyes, the dolls are asleep, the walls are quiet. The blizzard is only a story now. Good night, darlings. Dream of order, dream of method.